Hi everyone, it's Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen. It's a pleasure to be back online. It's been a while. Baruch Hashem, I was out for about 6 weeks. Thank God, only good things. Moved in and celebrated the grand opening of my beautiful brand new office that my wife, who's a freshly minted house designer, designed for me. Thank God, over the winter we worked on it very hard, she and I, to produce this beautiful office, which I hope that I can help everyone with, whoever comes to visit me right here in Brooklyn, New York. As well, it was a beautiful Pesach, but sometimes you need a little break in order to be able to refresh yourself and to remain as good as you can be for your clients. First, before I start tonight's presentation, I always want to put it out there to encourage everyone who's single or who knows someone who's single to please put your dating resume up on Partners in Shidduchim. If you need any help in writing that resume, you can turn to me. I'll be glad to do it for you. I've written thousands of them. And if you need my help in any way, anywhere in the world, to get any kind of help in dating mentoring or dating coaching, or you'd like for me to help you and create a top 10 list, or get matched up, or would you like a copy of a PDF of 100 questions that you can use on your dates? That's very helpful. Or if you'd like any help in Shalom Bayis, please feel free to reach out to me to my cell phone at 305-206-1916. Again, 305-206-1916 from anywhere in the world. Or you can email me at drjackcohen18@gmail.com. Or you can go and write me an email to my website, drjackdating.com, which I encourage you to go on there. There's great articles, there's great presentations, there are great videos on there. You can learn so much wealth of information on that website. I encourage you. I also want to give a mazel tov to the numerous people who I've had the pleasure to mentor and grant guidance to, that have been informing me in the last 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of their engagements. Baruch Hashem, it's been a really successful and very, very active season of wonderful celebrations. Keep them coming. And I want to help you get there. So if you need my help, or you know someone needs my help, just let them know that I can be reached here, and I'd be happy to help them. So anyway, it's been a very interesting season in terms of the kind of people that have been asking for my assistance. It's getting a little bit more complicated recently as I delve into people's lives. Individuals that have come to me have been couples who are wanting to get married but have issues in terms of one of the partners has anger issues, one of the partners has commitment issues, one of them has foul language issues. Another individual who I've been getting a lot of people lately who are divorced that have been helping a lot in their 50s and 60s to get married, and that comes with a set of complications. There's been a case recently on the other side of the country where people have been having issues in terms of getting it down to the wedding, so Baruch Hashem, we've been helping them there. There's an individual out there who I've started to mentor, for example, recently, who hasn't stepped into a shul in about 5 years, although he comes from an Orthodox home. So a part of my work is not just to help them get married, but to help them find themselves and help them come to peace with themselves. And on, Baruch Hashem. It's been a very interesting and challenging time, but thank God the skills are there and we're able to help them all. And I believe if you need my help, I'll be happy to do that as well. I had the pleasure to be on vacation last week in my old hometown of Miami, and I got to reread a book that I must have read about 15 years ago, and it's called The Magic of Thinking Big. It was written probably 50 or 60 years ago, and I got to thinking there were some incredible and amazing principles that I can use from that book in order to be able to engage people in the dating scene and the Shalom Bayis scene. And I'm going to read you some excerpts from that book, and I'm going to apply them to how we can become much more effective daters, much more effective husbands and wives, and continue to work on ourselves to improve, because the more we work on ourselves to improve, the more happier we'll be in life. And there's so many wonderful resources that we can use. Let's start. Success means many wonderful, positive things. Success means personal prosperity, a fine home, vacations, travel, a beautiful husband, a beautiful wife, financial security, giving your children maximum advantages. Success means that you're admired by people and that you can lead people. You're in a position of leadership. You're looked up by people in your business and social life. Success means self-respect, continuously finding more real happiness and satisfaction from life, being able to do more for those who depend on you. When you boil it down to its essence, ladies and gentlemen, success means winning, that you can be a winner. You can be a winner at dating. You can be a winner as a husband and a wife in Shalom Bayis. Every one of us wants success. Everybody wants the best this life can deliver. Nobody enjoys crawling, living in mediocrity. No. Why can't we use these principles to teach ourselves now how can we become more effective at dating and at living with a partner? No one likes feeling second class and feeling forced to go that way. Believe, really believe you can move a mountain, and you can. It's all about your emunah in yourself, your emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not many people believe they can move mountains. So as a result, not many people do. Isn't that unfortunate? But you can move a mountain with belief. You can win success by believing you can succeed. Many of the people that I deal with have such self-esteem issues. And as a result, much of the work that I do encompasses building their self-esteem so that I can get them to a point where they believe in themselves. And when they believe in themselves, then it's much easier for them to succeed in dating. There's nothing magical or mystical about the power of belief. It works this way. Belief, the I'm positive, I can attitude, generates the power and the skill and the energy to do it. When you believe I can do it, the how-to just follows naturally. But it starts with working on yourself. Even if you can sit down and read some wonderful books like Living Emunah or The Garden of Emunah or The Garden of Gratitude, there's some wonderful books out there that can help you in this process. Every day all over, young people start working in new jobs. Each of them wishes that someday they can enjoy the success that goes with reaching and making it to the top. But the majority of these young people simply don't have the belief that it takes to reach the top rung. And they don't reach the top because they don't believe in themselves. Believing it's impossible to climb high, they don't discover the steps that lead to great heights. Their behavior remains that of the average John Doe, the average person. But a small number of these young people really believe they'll succeed. They approach their work with, I'm going to the top attitude. I'm going to get the best shidduch. I can work on it. Not necessarily the wealthiest person. Not necessarily the highest IQ person. Not necessarily the most socially intense individual. But the person that matches you. They can give that effort and create a top 10 list and go out and search for someone that has the character and the values and the ethics and the love and nurturing capability to be a great partner in life. And with substantial belief, they reach the top. Believing they'll succeed, that it's not impossible, these people study and observe the behavior of other people that are successful. The how-to always comes to the person who believes they can do it. So don't worry how I'll get there. Don't worry how I'll find that person. Just work on your emunah b'tachon. Be a happy, positive, grateful individual. A young person decided 2 years ago that she was going to establish a business to sell mobile homes. She was advised by many, you'll never be able to do it. Don't waste your time. She had less than $3,000 in savings and was advised that the minimum capital investment required was many times that. Look how competitive it is, she was advised. And besides, what experience do you have in selling mobile homes? What experience do you have, let alone in managing a business? Her advisors asked. But this young woman would not take no for an answer. She had belief in herself and her ability to succeed. She quickly admitted that she lacked money and the business was competitive and that she lacked experience. But she said the following: all the evidence I can gather shows that the mobile home industry is going to expand. On top of that, I've studied my competition. I can do a better job of merchandising the merchandise than anybody else. I expect to make some mistakes, but I'm going to be on top in a hurry. Look at her belief in herself. And Hashem helps those who are ready to help themselves. If you believe in yourself, the next step is much easier, to believe in God and that He can do anything for you. And she was. She had little trouble attracting money. Her absolutely unquestioned belief that she could succeed with this business won her the confidence of 2 investors and armed her with the complete belief that she did the impossible. She got a trailer manufacturer to advance her a limited inventory with no money down whatsoever. Last year, she sold over $2 million worth of trailers. Next year, she says, I expect to gross over $4 million. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, belief, strong belief, triggers the mind to figure out ways and means and how-tos. And believing you can succeed makes others place confidence in you. Most people don't put much stock in belief, but some, the residents of the town of Successville, do just that. Just a few weeks ago, a friend, writes the author, who's an official with the State Highway Department, released a mountain moving experience. Last month, he said, our department sent notices to a number of engineering companies that we were authorized to retain a firm to design 8 bridges as part of a highway building program. The bridges were to be built at a cost of $10 million. The engineering firm selected would get a 4% commission. I talked with 21 engineering firms about this. The 4 largest decided right away to submit bids and proposals. The other 17 companies were small, having only 3 to 17 engineers each. The size of the project scared off 16 of these 17. They went over the project, shook their heads, and said, in effect, it's too big for us. I wish I thought we could handle it, but it's no use even trying. But one of these little firms, a company with only 3 engineers, studied the plans and said, we can do it. will submit a proposal. They did, and they got the job. Those who believe they can move mountains. Those who believe they can't, cannot. Belief triggers the power to do. Actually, in these modern times, belief is doing much more bigger things than moving mountains. The most essential element, in fact, the essential element, is to believe in oneself. Just like we believe that man can conquer space, and we're seeing it today. Belief in great results is the driving force, the power behind all great books, all great scientific discoveries. Belief in success is behind every successful business, every successful marriage, every successful shidduch. Believe, really believe, you can succeed and you will. Over the years, I've talked with many people who have failed in business ventures and in various careers. I've heard a lot of reasons and excuses for failure. Something especially significant unfolds as conversations with failures develop. In a casual sort of way, the failure drops a remark like, to tell you the truth, I knew that the shidduch wouldn't work out. I knew the business would be a failure. Or I had misgivings before I even started out. Or actually, I wasn't surprised that it didn't work out. That's a terrible mindset. The okay, I'll give it a try, but I don't think it's going to work out attitude usually produces failures. You become your own self-fulfilling prophecy. This belief is a negative power. When the mind disbelieves or doubts, the mind attracts reasons to support the disbelief. Doubt, disbelief will find a way to fail. So we have to be careful. I had the pleasure over the Pesach break to read in the most amazing book. I had heard about this book and I was waiting for the Pesach break in order to read it. It's called Living Legend, Story of the Disco Rabbi, Rabbi David Grossman. An amazing story about a man who grew up in the shtetl in Me'ar Sha'arim, this little hamlet in Yerushalayim, who decided to leave his comfortable life there and go trek up to the north to a town called Migdal Emek, a town made up of mostly recent immigrants in the 1960s. No shuls, no yeshivas, a town of drugs, a town of crime, a town of terrible events taking place. And he decided, I'm going to live here and I'm going to turn this backward town into a great city. It became such a great city that there's only 2 cities in the entire Israel that are completely Shomer Shabbat, Bnei Brak and Migdal Emek. Rabbi Grossman writes in his book, fascinating book, just a little bit about, I want to show you what it is to have faith and belief. It was Motzei Shabbos. There was a knock on the door. Rabbi David went to answer. Standing at the door was a man the rabbi knew very well. He was a rabbi, a Talmid Chacham, a man who had a very busy life, learning and teaching Torah. If he came to see the rabbi, he was sure there was a good reason for the visit. So Rabbi Grossman invited him into the house, and the 2 of them sat down. Rabbi David waited to hear what was on the rabbi's mind. And the visitor said, Rabbi, it's my sister. She was married. It didn't last long. Unfortunately, the other side hid some very important information from us, and it was determined after she got married that the person that she was married to was unfit to be a husband. My sister understood very quickly that it wasn't going to work. The marriage ended shortly after they got married, and since then she hasn't been successful in finding another shidduch. It happens to be that she was just visiting my house from Europe, where she lives, and of course the conversation turns to her situation. Please continue, Rabbi Grossman prodded. I asked her if she'd be willing to come with me to see you and get a bracha from you. She agreed that it would be a good idea. She's waiting outside to see if she can speak with the Rav. Please bring her in, the Rav said. When the 2 of them were seated before him, Rabbi David blessed the woman with a long list of blessings and delivered with his trademark warmth and sincerity. He's an affectionate, warm man. That was all to be expected. But then Rabbi Grossman took the conversation in a very interesting direction. Listen to what he tells her. I don't know if you're familiar with this, he tells the woman, but in the world of Hasidim, there's a tradition, a minhag, to relate a story from the Baal Shem Tov on Saturday nights, on Motzei Shabbos. Since it happens now to be Motzei Shabbos, and since you're here, I'd like to share a story from the holy Baal Shem Tov, who was the person who had started the Hasidic movement. She was, of course, very interested in hearing which particular story that the rabbi had in mind. And so the rabbi begins. A woman came to see the Baal Shem Tov. Rabbi Grossman began the story. This woman was unable to have children, and so she traveled to the Baal Shem Tov hoping for a bracha, for a blessing that would lead to a Yeshua, salvation. The Baal Shem Tov, however, knew that she was unable to have children, and he was reluctant to give her a blessing since that would entail changing the course of nature, something which he tried not to do, that he saw with his holy vision that it was not possible for this woman to have kids. But the woman did not relent. She didn't give up. And she returned to the Baal Shem Tov's home, where she threw herself down on the threshold of his front door just before the rabbi was getting ready to leave the home to go daven mincha. And she said the following: if the rabbi wants to leave the house, he's going to have to step over my body because I'm not moving from the spot. Or the rabbi can just give me a bracha and I'll get up right now. What was the Baal Shem Tov supposed to do in such a situation? Here was a woman lying on the floor, completely blocking his ability to exit the house. With no choice, the Baal Shem Tov blessed the woman that she should merit to hold a child in her arms. Overjoyed, the woman thanked the Baal Shem Tov over and over before taking leave of the holy tzaddik. A year passed, and the couple invited the Baal Shem Tov to serve as the sandak at the bris of the newborn son, knowing that his bracha had caused nature to change on his behalf. And this was a very serious thing, something he wasn't really too crazy about. The Baal Shem Tov asked his Gabbai to find out, what did the woman do after getting a bracha from me? Find out if she did anything special, any special mitzvah that had caused heaven to agree to alter nature on her behalf and alter the decree that she should never have children that would allow her to actually have kids. She must have done something special. Go find out what she did. Well, she replied, I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. In response to the question, after the Rebbe blessed me with a child, I went home where I immediately began preparing a room for the baby. I put up new curtains in this new room. I purchased a baby crib. Then I made sure we had a beautiful new baby carriage and whatever else we might possibly need for the arrival of our baby, who I knew was going to be here soon. Ladies and gentlemen, she was demonstrating what we've been learning about for the last 20 minutes. Belief. When the Baal Shem Tov heard the answer, he said, oh, now I'm calm. It wasn't I who made this miracle happen. It was the woman herself who convinced the Ribbon Shalom, the master of the universe, to give her a child by her actions and her emunah, her belief. That was the story of Grossman shared with this visitor. That Motzei Shabbos. After he finished sharing the story with them, they thanked him for his time and blessings, and they left the house. Now listen to what happens. The next afternoon, the man arranged a time to meet his sister so they could visit some of the holy grave sites, the Kibbutz Tzadikim, located in the north of the country, near Tzvat, Meron, etc. When he arrived at the agreed upon spot, however, he didn't see his sister waiting for him. He dialed her number. And she answered, and he asks her, where are you? And she answers to her brother, I'm in the supermarket. What are you doing in the supermarket? Well, I had to buy a few things. Okay, wait outside, I'll be there in 5 minutes. When he pulled up in front of the store, he saw his sister emerge with a wagon full of bags. What's going on? He asked her. What's with all the shopping? Look, she replied, yesterday we were sitting with Rabbi Grossman and he told us the story of the Baal Shem Tov and how the woman in the story went out and bought everything she needed for her baby because she had been on the receiving end of a tremendous blessing and knew that it was going to come true. Knew with a capital K. I too received a bracha yesterday from Rabbi Grossman, a holy tzaddik, and I decided to follow the example of the woman in the story. I went to the supermarket, I purchased everything we might possibly need for my engagement party, or as we say it, my vort. I bought the nicest paper goods, the nicest plasticware. I really splurged. But look, you don't get engaged every day, right? All this happened on Sunday. On Monday, a matchmaker from Jerusalem called the woman's mother in Europe and told her she had heard that her daughter was currently visiting Israel and she had an idea for a shidduch for her. I would like to meet her, the shadchan said to the woman in Europe. I'd like to meet your daughter. Is that possible? Stay on the line, the mother replied, and I'll call her on my other phone right now. Where are you right now? She asked her daughter when she got on the line. She said, I'm in Yerushalayim. The mother relayed the information to the shadchan. Great, she said. I'm also in Yerushalayim. Where is she right now? And so they found out where she was, and the mother asked her daughter, she said, I'm in Geula. And the woman said, I'm there too. They made up to meet 10 minutes later. The meeting went well, and the shadchan suggested a shidduch to the woman with her nephew who was learning in Lakewood. And what's meant to happen, it happens. And here's what happened. Within 5 months later, she was engaged. And at the table, at the engagement, were all the wonderful things she bought in Israel. Fancy dishes, plates, and cups that she purchased in a supermarket in the town of Migdal HaEmek. The joy at the engagement party was so intense that the roof of the house could be almost shaking. Every dish, every bag of expensive cutlery was opened. It had all been purchased for the special occasion and fell in the category of an emunah dish, a dish of faith. 5 months later, everyone gathered in the city of Yerushalayim at the wedding itself, which was celebrated at a beautiful hall in the center of the city. Rav Yitzchak David Grossman officiated at the ceremony, but most importantly, we learn here the power of belief. If you believe in something, The how-to only follows, much easier. Let's continue with some stories about Rabbi Grossman. These will only help us to strengthen our emunah. In the winter of 2020, Rabbi Yitzchak David served as the Masada Kedushin, as the person who officiated at the ceremony of the two weddings that took place one day apart. One in the city of Yerushalayim on a Sunday night, the other in Tiberia in the north on Monday evening. While every wedding is a cause for joy, these two weddings were particularly moving. In order for us to understand why this was so, we have to provide the background or the backstory of each of these events. A number of years ago, the Israeli media was abuzz with the story of a 16-year-old boy from the city of Tiberia. The boy had been diagnosed with cancer and was in Rambam hospital in Haifa, where the oncology staff was anxiously waiting to begin treating him for the cancer. The problem was that the boy refused to allow them to begin administering treatment. For its part, the hospital wanted to force the boy to allow them to give him treatment, and they turned to the courts asking the judge assigned to the case to give them the legal ability to administer treatment, even against his will. When the boy understood where his situation was headed, he made up his mind to escape from the hospital, which he did twice. When he was returned to the hospital, he let it be known that if he was forced to accept treatment, he would find a way to jump into the nearby ocean. Needless to say, the story caused an uproar, with everyone having something to say about it. Rabbi Yitzchak David was also following the saga as it developed, and when he saw that the matters were not calming down, on the contrary, they were escalating, he decided he could no longer sit down on the sidelines. Leaving his hometown of Migdal Emek in the north, he traveled to Rambam Hospital in Haifa, where he would be able to speak with the patient face to face and find out what was the cause of all the issues. Haifa is not very far from Migdal Emek, and in a short time, Rabbi Grossman was walking into the hospital and asking the receptionist for the number of the patient's room. Sitting with the patient, Rabbi Grossman talked to the boy for about 2 hours, explaining that allowing the hospital to administer the treatment was a matter of pikuach nefesh, a matter of life and death, and that he had to keep the halacha, ushmartem me'od lenafshotechem. It says in the Torah that we are responsible for our health. We are responsible for our own welfare, and the Torah expects us to do whatever we have to do to use medical care to achieve that. But no matter what the rabbi said, he could see that he wasn't getting through to the boy. Suddenly the patient burst into tears. "What's the matter?" Rabbi Grossman asked him. "Tell me, why are you crying?" "I want to take the treatments," the boy said, "but I'm not allowed." "Who doesn't allow you?" the rabbi said. "My parents have forbidden me from having the treatments." "I'll go and see your parents immediately," he told the boy. "Don't worry, everything will be okay." Then Yitzchak David left the Rambam hospital and told his driver that they were headed to Tiberia with no time to waste. The scenic flatlands leading to Tiberia gave way to the sloping hills that border the city situated on the edge of the jewel-like Kinneret, the beautiful lake. Evening was fast approaching. As Rav Grossman's driver parked outside the apartment building, the patient called home. After knocking on the door and being welcomed into the simple home, the Rav looked at a seat across the table from the boy's parents. This was followed by the most cursory of salutations between Rav Grossman, as he grabbed the bull by the horns and asked the parents in the most direct fashion imaginable, why are they forbidding their son from seeking treatment from this dangerous illness, this cancer? How is it possible that parents would deny their child the opportunity to live? The rabbi could just not understand it. In the beginning, the parents didn't want to tell them their reason. But Rav Grossman doesn't let opposition get in his way. And he spoke and spoke and spoke, and in the end, the parents had to tell them the truth. "We are followers," the parents said, "of a certain rabbi," they told Rabbi Grossman, "and he has ruled against the oncology or the cancer treatment. So you're refusing your son's treatment because of your rabbi?" "Yes." "And if your rabbi tells you to go ahead with you, will you?" "Yes." "Well then," Rabbi Grossman said, "I'll just have to go and speak to your rabbi." It was 9 o'clock in the evening when Rabbi Grossman was shown into the room where the rabbi was sitting and learning. After exchanging a few words of greeting with each other, the two of them got down to the business at hand. And Rabbi Grossman asked him, "Why is the Rav refusing to allow the patient to be treated?" And the rabbi answered, "I don't believe in the hospital's treatments. In my opinion, they are the cause of many people dying and not the other way around. And not only do they kill patients, they cause them to suffer miserably along the way." Rabbi Grossman tried reasoning with him, quoting the words, "V'rapoy rapeh, you shall surely heal," the two words from the Torah which give physicians license to heal, with the Torah's direct desire. The Torah's permission for doctors to do the utmost to heal patients. But it didn't take the rabbi long to realize that there was no way he was going to change this rabbi's mind, so he decided to take another approach. If Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the great Tsar, Prince of Torah, rules that this boy must be given treatment for his illness, will you, the rabbi, give the parents permission to follow his ruling? "Yes," the rabbi said. "Then I will go and speak with Rav Chaim and let you know what he says." And with that, Rab Grossman left the home of the rabbi and instructed his driver to head for Highway 6 in Israel and the city of Bnei Brak, which is the hometown of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. It was an emergency and there was no time to waste. Rav Grossman reached Rehov Rashbam, the street where Rav Chaim lives, around 11:30 that night. When he arrived at the world-famous address, he learned that the Gadol Hadol, the great Torah leader of the generation, was not home. He was attending an event and would be back shortly. "I need to see Rav Chaim as soon as he returns," he told the Gabbai. The Gabbai, the assistant who knew Rav Grossman, replied, "Can't it wait until tomorrow? No, it's a matter of life and death and needs to be dealt with immediately." The Gabbai had nothing more to say and allowed Rabbi Grossman to wait inside the house until Rav Chaim returned. When the venerable sage finally arrived, Rav Grossman told Rav Chaim the entire story and asked him what he should tell the family's rabbi. He absolutely must take the treatment, Rav Chaim said. Al pi Torah, according to the Torah, he must take the treatment. Tell the rabbi that I said so in my name. Thanking Rav Chaim for his time, Rav Grossman left the house and got back into the car. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Back to the house of the rabbi, where we just came from." It was a little after 2 in the morning Rav Grossman re-entered the study in which he had argued the patient's case just a few hours earlier. The rabbi was up and learning as he did every night. "I just returned home from Rav Chaim," he told the rabbi. So the rabbi asked Rav Grossman, what did Rav Chaim say? That the patient must accept the treatment al pi Torah, according to the Torah. The rabbi immediately took a piece of paper and wrote a note for the parents. And he wrote in Hebrew, "Whatever Rav Grossman tells you to do, you're to follow." And so, Rav Yitzchak left the house a few minutes later, precious note in hand. It was now close to 3 in the morning. He would have returned to the boy's parents already then, but there was no difference if he spoke with them at 3 or waited until 7. The hospital would not start the treatment at this hour. Therefore, Rav Grossman returned home to Migdal Emek, caught a few hours of sleep, and was back at Tiberia at 7 o'clock sharp the next day. Look how much love he has for a fellow Jew. Extraordinary. After reading the note from their rabbi, the parents agreed to follow all of Rav Grossman's instructions regarding their son. "I want you to come with me to Rambam Hospital right now," he said. There was no resistance, and they set out for Haifa a few minutes later. The first stop upon arrival was in the patient's room, where the parents informed their son that he was now free to be treated due to their rabbi's acceptance of Rav Chaim's ruling. They then met with the professor in charge of the cancer department, where the parents let her know that the hospital is free to try and heal their son using any means at their disposal. The doctor could not believe what was happening in her office and was overjoyed at being given the opportunity to try and save the boy. The patient's treatment regimen was initiated shortly afterward. In a miraculous turn of events, Rav Grossman said it wasn't long before the doctors began seeing fantastic results as he turned the corner and started to get better. Looking at the boy, one would have been hard-pressed to believe that only a short while before he had been lying in bed with no hope of survival. He was on the edge of death. And yet, with 8 car rides to different parts of the country and a halachic ruling from Chaim Kanievsky, everything turned out differently. Now, Migdal Or, which is the institution that Rav Grossman started, provides a very unique service to needy brides-to-be or kallas, assisting them with all their wedding needs at their bridal salon. Located in what was the first building used by the institution, the rooms are now filled with exquisite bridal gowns, shelves of shiny, gorgeous white shoes, glass counters showcasing an array of jewelry, makeup and hair stations. Basically everything a bride needs to look her best on her big day. So one of the great services that Rav Grossman offers to the Jewish public in Israel. They leave from the salon directly to their weddings, Rav Grossman explains. The salon was created by his wife, who built it in the memory of her sister. It was not uncommon for alumni of Migdal Or to come back home to prepare for their weddings. Shortly after Sukkot 2020, one such student arrived at the salon and gave the Rebbetzin the date of her wedding, booking the salon for the afternoon prior to Rosh Chodesh Kislev. "Where's the wedding?" And the student said, "In Tiberia." "And who is the lucky guy, the chassan?" Rebbetzin Grossman asked her. "It was none other than the patient from Rambam Hospital, the patient, the boy who survived the cancer, for whom Rabbi Yitzchak David Grossman had made 8 different trips in his car for the purpose of saving his life. He was now marrying a student of the rabbi. And obviously the rabbi was invited to serve as the Misader Kedushin, or the officiating rabbi at the wedding. And while he seldom attends weddings during the months of the COVID-19 virus, here he felt he had to, since it was the wedding of a boy whose life he had the merit to save. The second wedding. Well, let's hear the story. And the rabbi writes, "I served as the Misader Kedushin at a wedding on Sunday and Monday. Monday was the boy from the hospital, and Sunday brings me back a half a century to when I first arrived in the city of Migdal Emek in the north. We didn't have a school of our own, and yet I used to bring students to other institutions in Bnei Brak or Yerushalayim and put them in these schools where they became completely polished new individuals. Sometimes those trips took me a few days since I had to go by bus, from bus to bus to bus to bus. He was willing to do whatever it took to help a young boy, a young girl make it in life and get them out of the slums. There was one specific girl who I worked very hard to save from the streets. I can't tell you how much time I spent convincing her to leave Migdal Emek and go to a religious institution in the center of the country. Finally, the girl agreed, and I took her to Bnei Brak. There, I enrolled her in a school called Orach Chaim, which is a seminary for girls. But I was worried if she would be able to be successful there because she didn't have the background or the learning skills. To my immense sadness, the rabbi writes, the girl had a breakdown and ran away from the school. I knew that if I didn't convince her to return within the next few days, she would be lost forever. Already she was a different person from the girl I knew, and she'd only been back in Migdal Emek for a short while. You can't imagine, the rabbi writes, how hard I worked to convince her. She didn't want to go back. It was too difficult and with too many rules, and she didn't have any friends, and the staff was too demanding. It's very hard as a girl who's not religious to suddenly be brought into an institution which is very religious and all the classmates are religious, to identify with that world when you don't have the skills and you don't have the background, you don't have the family structure is very difficult. But the rabbi writes, I don't know how she did it, but somehow miraculously she agreed to return to Bnei Brak, and this time she stayed. She ended up marrying one of our students, a genuine Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, and the couple was blessed with 13 children. Every one of those children is a diamond. They are the cream of the Torah world and are married to the best families of the Torah world. And this girl, now a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother, was marrying off her youngest child on the night before the wedding of the boy from Rambam Hospital. And yes, I agreed, the rabbi writes, to serve as the Mesader Kedushin at that wedding as well. How could I not? As I looked around the hall at the couple's children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the girl that I rescued from the streets came over to me. Rav Grossman, she says, she was radiant, glowing with the kind of joy that comes from the deepest, most powerful part of a human being. Yes, I said to her. She waved her arm, encompassing the entire room and everyone in it, all the children and grandchildren, all the generations of wonderful Jewish neshamas, the generations of pious Jewish souls, and said, Rabbi Grossman, they're all yours. They're all yours. It was a kind of closing of a circle that began when a young man, talking about himself, went from Me'asher Arim, which is one of the close-knit, very religious communities in Israel, in Yerushalayim, got off a bus and walked into a crime-ridden city where there were no schools, no yeshivas, no shuls, a city where he became the disco rabbi and over the years a living legend. And this is what happens when, ladies and gentlemen, there's what's belief. When you believe in yourself, and good things do start happening. Your mind is a thought factory. It's a busy factory producing countless thoughts in one day. Production in your thought factory is under the charge of two foremen, one of whom we shall call Mr. Triumph, and the other foreman called Mr. Defeat. Mr. Triumph is in charge of manufacturing good thoughts, positive thoughts. He specializes in producing reasons why you can, why you're qualified, why you will succeed. The other foreman, Mr. Defeat, produces negative, depressing thoughts. He is your expert in developing reasons why you can't, why you're weak, why you're inadequate, why you can't get married to that person, why the shidduch won't work. His specialty is why you'll fail. Both Mr. Triumph and Mr. Defeat are intensely obedient. They snap to attention immediately. All you need to do is signal either foreman to give the slightest mental beck and call. If the signal is positive, Mr. Triumph will step forward and go to work. Likewise, a negative signal brings Mr. Defeat forward. To see how these two foremen work for you, try this example. Tell yourself, today is a lousy day. This signals Mr. Defeat into action, and he manufactures facts to prove you're right. He suggests to you that it's too hot, it's too cold, business is going to be bad today, sales will drop, other people will be on edge, you may get sick, your wife or husband will be in a bad mood. Mr. Defeat is tremendously efficient. In just a few moments, he's got you sold that life is terrible. It's a bad day. Before you know it, it's a heck of a bad day. But tell yourself, today's a great day, and Mr. Triumph is signaled forward to act. He tells you, it's a wonderful day. The weather's great. It's refreshing. It's good to be alive. Today you can catch up on some of your work. It's going to be a really wonderful day. In like fashion, Mr. Defeat can show you why you can't sell anything to a potential client. Mr. Triumph will show you that you can. Mr. Defeat will convince you that you'll fail. Mr. Triumph will demonstrate why you will succeed. Mr. Defeat will prepare a brilliant case against your friend, while Mr. Triumph will show you more reasons why you can like someone. Now, the more work you give either of these two foremen, the stronger that person becomes. If Mr. Defeat is given more work to do, he adds personal and takes up more space in your mind. Eventually, he'll take over the entire thought manufacturing division, and virtually all thought will be of a negative nature. That's why it's so critical to have a session of gratitude every day. And if you need my help, just reach out to me. I'll send you a copy of the thank you card. I say it every day. I've told thousands upon thousands of people to say it. I can't encourage you enough to have a life of gratitude, to surround yourself with positive people. The only wise thing to do is fire Mr. Defeat. You don't need him. You don't want him around telling you that you can't, you're not up to it, you'll fail, and so on. Mr. Defeat won't help you get where you want to go, so let's just boot him out. Use Mr. Triumph 100% of the time. When any thought enters your mind, ask Mr. Triumph to go to work for you. He'll show you how to succeed, and that's important. We have opportunities at our beck and call that we can just access. It's so important that we have to have good, positive thoughts. So how do we develop the power of belief? Here are 3 guides to acquire and strengthen the power of belief. Number 1, think success. Don't think failure. At work, in shidduchim, with your family, in your home, substitute success thinking for failure thinking. When you face a difficult situation, think, I'll win. I'll probably lose. When you compete with someone else, think, I'm equal to the best, not I'm outclassed. When opportunity appears, think, I can do it, not I can't. Let the master thought, I will succeed, dominate your thinking process. Thinking success conditions your mind to create plans that produce success. Thinking failure does the exact opposite. Failure thinking conditions the mind to think other thoughts that produce failure. Remind yourself regularly that you are better than you think you are. Successful people are not supermen. Success does not require a super intellect, nor is there anything mystical about success. Any success isn't based on luck. Successful people are just regular people who have developed belief in themselves and what they do. Never, yes, never sell yourself short. Number 3, believe big. The size of your success is determined by the size of your belief. Think little goals and expect little achievement. Think big goals and win big success. Remember this too, big ideas and big plans are often easier, certainly no more difficult than small ideas and small plans. Now, sometimes we have issues that fears get into our psyche. So let's work on that. Fear number 1, I'm embarrassed of my personal appearance. What can I do? What action can I do to counteract that? Well, improve it. Let's go to a salon or a barbershop or beauty salon, shine your shoes, get new clothes, get your clothes cleaned and pressed. In general, practice better grooming. It doesn't always take new clothes. Number 2, fear of failing, like in my tests in school. Well, convert worry time into study time. Fear of things totally beyond your control. Turn your attention to helping others. Daven, pray to Hashem, and He'll help you overcome this. Fear of being physically hurt by someone you can't control, or being emotionally hurt by someone. Switch your attention to something totally different. Go do something else. Fear of what other people might say and think about you. And the answer to that is make sure that what you plan to do is right. Then do it. No one ever does anything worthwhile for which they're not criticized. There's always someone out there that's going to criticize you. Fear of people. Solution. Put them in proper perspective. Remember, the other person is just another human being pretty much like yourself, made of the same flesh and blood. Use this 2-step procedure to cure fear and win confidence. Isolate your fear. Pin it down. Determine exactly what you're afraid of. Then take action. There's some kind of action for any kind of fear. And remember, hesitation only enlarges the fear. Take action promptly and be decisive. Let's close with the following. 4 ways to develop a big thinker's vocabulary. Here are 4 ways to help you develop a big thinker's vocabulary. Use big, positive, cheerful words and phrases to describe how you feel. When someone asks you, how do you feel today? You respond, don't say, I'm tired, I have a headache, I wish it was already the weekend, I don't feel so good. No, practice this. How are you? I feel great. I feel wonderful. Baruch Hashem, everything's fantastic. Say you feel wonderful every possible opportunity, and you'll begin to feel wonderful. And bigger too. Become known as a person who always feels great. It wins friends. Use bright, cheerful, favorable words and phrases to describe other people. Make it a rule to have a big positive word for all your friends and associates. The complete opposite of Lashon Hara. When you and someone else are discussing an absent third party, be sure you compliment the person with big words and phrases like, he's such a nice guy, she's such a nice girl, they tell me he's working out wonderfully well at school or work. Be extremely careful to avoid petty language that cuts people down. Sooner or later, third parties hear about what's been said and it just cuts you down. Next, use positive language to encourage others. Compliment people at every opportunity. Everyone you know craves praise. I always tell that to my singles, my clients. I tell them, make sure you compliment the person that you're dating. Find out about what they've achieved, what they succeeded at, and give them compliments. Everyone is thirsty for a compliment. Have a special good word for your husband or your wife. Notice and compliment the people who work with you. Praise, sincerely administered, is a success formula. Use it again and again and again. Compliment people on their appearance, their work, their achievements, their families. 4. Use positive words to outline plans for others. When people hear something like this, here's some good news, or here are great opportunities coming, they perk up. They want to hear. Their minds start to sparkle. When they hear something like, whether you like it or not, we got a job to do, they start thinking dull and boring, and they shut down. Promise victory and watch eyes light up. Promise victory and win support. Build castles, don't dig graves. And that's why it's important. Let me just share a story with you that recently came out, a little while back actually, in Ami magazine, that shows how a person was able to change that attitude and as a result change their life. For the first 10 years of our marriage, a woman writes, I thought we were having an extraordinary life, though I didn't realize at the time it was actually a beautiful life. Beautiful means waking up in the morning without weight in your chest, sending your children off to school and cleaning up the house and preparing supper. Beautiful means not having a sick child in the hospital or a house in foreclosure or an estranged family member. Beautiful means a host of little problems, maybe a teething baby, a mailbox full of bills, a snow day, instead of one big problem that eclipses all the smaller ones. And that was my life. Ordinary, filled with comforting routines. I was fortunate to be a full-time mother as my husband, Chaim, had a good job with a local construction firm. He was a site manager and spent hours each day overseeing a crew building an apartment complex from the ground up. He wasn't involved much at home, but that was okay. I was perfectly capable of raising the children and caring for their needs. Our 5 little ones were healthy and lively and whiny and noisy. I wasn't busy driving children to therapy appointments or sitting hunched over a beeping monitor in a hospital ICU, thank God. I wasn't waking up at the crack of dawn to hurry to work and come home like a zombie to attention-starved children. I had the luxury of knowing our bills would be paid at the end of the month, and I was able to restock my pantry at the supermarket without thinking twice. Yes, I was lucky in those days. Unfortunately, I was too wrapped up in what I was missing to appreciate what I had. During those early years, you'd be hard-pressed to hear a positive word coming out of my mouth. I was a chronic complainer. There was always someone who had something I didn't have. Whether it was a bigger bank account, a prettier home, better behaved children, their husbands were more successful than mine, their parents unstintingly generous, their lives filled with joy and sunshine, while mine was just a drag, and I let everyone know it. And then, in the span of a few months, my well-ordered life began to unravel. It began with a bang, quite literally. Chaim was on his way home from work on an icy winter day when his car skidded and he lost control. He crashed into the median and was thrown onto the shoulder of the highway. His car was totaled. Fortunately, his injuries were not life-threatening. He sustained a cracked skull, a broken collarbone, and 2 fractures in his spine. There was swelling in his brain, and the doctors weren't sure if there was any internal injuries. Although Hatzalah tried to prepare me for this sight, nothing could have prepared me to see my husband attached to a breathing tube and a heart monitor, his head rolling to one side, a vacant look in his eye. The recovery process was long and grueling, leaving him with residual side effects. What I found most galling was his boss's attitude. Things had not been perfect before the accident. The boss had taken advantage of Chaim, belittled him constantly and paid him far less than the going rate. Now that Chaim was bedridden and in chronic pain, the boss washed his hands and hired someone else. Chaim, frail and out of sorts, tried to look for a job. It would be another 3 years until he found a job, during which time we sank into a morass of debt and nearly lost our house. At some point I realized that I had to go to work if I wanted to keep our family afloat. My foray into the working world was filled with drama. I found a secretarial job after several months, but the environment was toxic and it drained me. 1/3 of my salary went to the babysitter, but what choice did I have? I stuck it out somehow, but it sapped all my strength. When I got home, I said hello to the kids, made a token appearance at the supper table, and collapsed onto bed. The dishes piled up, the floor was sticky and grimy, and most nights supper consisted of sandwiches. The kids were bathed sporadically and homework was rarely ever done. I was holding on to some semblance of normalcy by the skin of my teeth at best, while my life looked like it was falling apart. In the meantime, Chaim's self-esteem was shattered and he began sleeping most of the day. I would wake up early after a restless night. My youngest spent most of the night in my bed, exhausted and seething with resentment. It was only through the intervention of Chaim's Rav, who insisted that we should go for help, that he saved our marriage and our family. Chaim was diagnosed with severe depression, and he was placed on a cocktail of medications that began to ease his symptoms. It took another few years until he was healthy enough to find a job, and his situation slowly began to improve. Those major challenges took place over a 10-year period, the hardest decade of my life. For many years I found it impossible to smile, to summon the strength to be interested in other people, to do more than slog through my day. I was either working or trying to make a dent in housework. I was dealing with all of my life with explosive anger. I also had to fulfill my basic responsibilities, keeping the kids fed and dressed and taken care of without any backup. I dragged myself through life encased in a black cloud of hopelessness and despair. I was present physically, but I wasn't really there. I had lost my capacity to laugh, to love, to be grateful, to feel. I snapped at the children while I cared for them, dreaming of the day that I could run away. I desperately needed a vacation, a change of scenery. I would be remiss if I said that I could not recall any positive moments because of the course they were, though few and far between. As the years went by with no major positive changes, I began to lose hope that I would ever find happiness again. And my sister said to me one day, "You're always in a bad mood." We were talking about something random and I was a bit snappy and cranky as usual. I was stung but furious. How dare she, with her perfect life and her successful husband and her adorable kids with her comfortable home, speak that way to me? How dare she judge me, look down on me when I was dealing with so much pain? "I hope you never understand what I'm living through," I said to her, my words encased in ice. "I have news for you," she responded. "You're not the only one experiencing challenges in life. No one is having it easy, so just snap out of it because you're ruining not only your own life, but your children's lives as well." I ended the conversation quickly, but it weighed on me for a long time. I was working so hard trying to keep it all together, despite the lack of support. I was a decent mom, I took care of my kids and did what was needed to be done. How dare she judge me? It took nearly 15 years for the pendulum to swing in the other direction, for my chaotic, stress-filled life to reach a level of calm. Our children, who had once been so young and needy, now grew up and they were more self-reliant, and they started to get married. I began to have the time to smell the roses in my backyard, to enjoy the simple pleasures of puttering around the house without being pulled in a million directions. Now I had a job I enjoyed. Our budget was considerably smaller, and we can pay the bills without undue hardship. And our youngest daughter, Miri, got married to a wonderful young man. And things started to improve so much. And as a result, my attitude got so much better. And she told me, my youngest daughter, "Ever since I can remember, you were in a grumpy mood, always snapping at us and complaining that you couldn't manage and how unlucky you were. I felt so guilty, like it was my fault that I had caused you problems." I was stunned to hear her perspective and devastated to learn that all my children felt this way. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Comments made by my family members over the years came flooding back. They had warned me that I was hurting my children with negativity. Hindsight, of course, is 20/20. Now I see it so clearly. True, I'd been carrying a heavy burden, but I had been absorbed in my own self-pity and never considered how my mood and attitude affected everyone around me. I might have thought I was doing my best to care for everyone by feeding and clothing them, but I neglected to give them a happy home, a home that made them feel happy and grateful and safe. It wasn't my fault. The challenges had been enormous, but I should have made the atmosphere in our home a priority. Had I made an effort to reach out for help and give myself a break instead of assuming the stance of a martyr, my younger children may have grown up in a home permeated with positivity and hope and belief and faith instead of blackness and despair. Today, many years later, most of the challenges I faced have disappeared, and my husband and I are enjoying the contentment and nachas I craved. But the damage I caused my beloved children during those challenging years, the destruction of their innocence, the wiping out of their happiness and joy, is something that tears at me. However, I'm determined to repair whatever I can. So my daughter and her husband are working hard in therapy. I'm doing my own internal work as well. I'm working to ensure that I never go back to that lane of being a miserable, complaining human being, that I'm positive, that I'm grateful, that I always see the good in my life. And when we see the good, God says, "You can tell me about the good, well, just watch out. I'm going to open the doors to more good and more good and more good." So what we learned tonight is the magic of thinking big is the magic of thinking that you can create, you can do, you can believe in yourself, that you have two foremen in your head, Mr. Triumph and Mr. Defeat, and you have to feed Mr. Triumph thoughts all the time. So Mrs. Triumph could be the one that gets called on, not Mr. Defeat. And taking that attitude, you can find and get yourself a fantastic shidduch. And if you're married, you can produce a fantastic shalom bayis. So I'm happy to have given this presentation tonight. Again, anyone anywhere in the world who needs my help in any way in dating, mentoring, or shidduchim, would like for me to evaluate a relationship that they're in, or need help with a relationship, or producing a top 10 list, or if you'd like any help in shalom bayis, for example, or you'd like a copy of the PDF for 100 questions to ask in dating, feel free to reach me at drjackcohen18@gmail.com, or you can call me on WhatsApp or text me 305-206-1916. Have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for joining in.